Hope everybody is doing well on this particular Monday afternoon. It is July 1st, 2024, and I hope that everybody is doing well. I know here in Durham, North Carolina, which is known for its medicine and its sports and everything along those lines, we're glad to have a little bit of reprieve in the temperature and all along those lines. Because right now it's 77 degrees, and that feels a lot better than those 90s and hundreds we were having that'll be coming back in the not too distant future. I think they'll be back by the 4th of July, possibly even as early as July 3rd. And I think we're supposed to be back in those high 90s and pushing near 100 and feel like temperatures of 105 and 110 on this later in the weekend as we get ready to celebrate the 4th of July and all along those lines. So I'm waiting to hear whether I'll be doing the Eno Festival, which I usually do on the 4th of July weekend. And it is always a blistering hot temperature out there. And actually, there was a change in management. So I've done it for a number of years, and I'm waiting to see from the new management if they want me to do it again and all along those lines. So it'll be quite interesting to see what takes place in that kind of respect and all along those lines. So we also had the pleasure this past weekend of at the Cultural Arts Center that I work at, the Hayti Heritage Center, of having some amazing young kids that just finished their 2-week SAI program. I think I'm pronouncing that Summer Arts Intensive. Yeah, so that's right, SAI. And I was actually honored as one of the community leaders along with my good friend Hanif Salim and all along those lines. And there were others that were honored as well. And definitely some of the teachers and others were given a little bit of credit for the community service that we do and all in that space. And I can tell you the kids were truly amazing. There's about 35 or 40 kids that were taking part in the program, and they were doing some Catherine Dunham style dance as well as some African style dance. And of course, they were also doing some spoken word and dramatic readings, and they did a sensational job, whether it was their rendition of Wade in the Water or whether it was their renditions of the dances and all along those lines. I definitely saw some kids that I think have some great potential and could actually be some stars in that world of dance in the not too distant future. Because like I said, I think the youngest kids were around 5 or 6, and the oldest might have been around high school age of around 16 or 17. But definitely there were a number of kids, and I saw some tremendous potential in what those kids were doing. And I'm looking forward to seeing where they take this love of theirs in the creative arts in the future and all in that space. As I was telling one of the young ladies, because I know I've been told the same thing about my own dad and everything, one of the young ladies, there's no doubt that she cannot deny her mom because her and her mom have a very similar look and all in that space. So the apple didn't fall far from the tree, to use that old expression, and all along those lines. And there was another one that was doing some sky some very detailed jumps. I'm sitting there going like, wow, I wish I could jump like that. And I probably could have back in the day. But even when I was on the track team, I wasn't all that limber and all in that space, which is probably why I didn't do the long jump. I tried to do the mile in the 880 and didn't have much luck in that space. But hey, I tried when I was a kid. Didn't try much in the creative arts, even though I do have a admiration for the creative arts. And I did try when I was in grammar school to be in, or actually I was in high school, I believe, being part of the drama club. And of course, I was part of the newspaper staff and a number of other things as well. So I might have dabbled a little bit in addition to the chess club in trying to get some of that creativity going. And like I said, the Cultural Arts Center, I've definitely seen some tremendous talent, and I definitely have seen some folks that are doing some amazing work. But one of the reasons that I reached out to my guest for today is because I've got a number of friends that have been fighting breast cancer and have been dealing with breast cancer throughout their life and everything. As a matter of fact, one of my friends who is in the musical journey and all along those lines, and I actually saw her post, and it was looking like she might be having some things going on in her life. I didn't get into a lot of details as to why she posted what she posted and everything, but I know that she has been in remission for a number of years, and it seems like she's been doing quite well. And I'm hoping that that message I saw on social media wasn't implying that things were turning negative or all in that space, because I want to say that she had a mastectomy or all along those lines, and definitely has fought that battle. And I've had other friends that have fought the battle as well. But my guest today and everything along those lines, Francesca Apale, is definitely one that will be able to share some of her thoughts about how she dealt with it and all in that space. And we're going to learn a little bit about her as well, maybe even find out if she had any sort of creative background and all along those lines, or if she had any background in sports, because I know a lot of people have been following Simone Biles and trying to see how she's going to do now that she's going to the Olympics and all along those lines, as well as others, including some people that are upset that Caitlin Clark wasn't named to the team that will be representing the USA here and all along those lines. But I'm going to bring in Francesca and learn a little bit about her journey, because like I said, I've definitely had some friends that have been in that battle, including some that are in various forms of remission and some that are constantly doing that battle and all along those lines. So I guess the first question I've got for you, Francesca, is if you'll tell our audience a little bit about yourself, and maybe even if you had any of that sports background, and also how the weather is where you are, because I know that you're over there in Canada. And like I told you before, we've got some Canadian representation here on the network. We do a show every Tuesday and Friday called Ukraine, Russia, and China. And the gentleman is originally from Ukraine. Ironically, he served, I want to say, in the Russian army when Ukraine was under the Russian Empire and everything. But now he is very much pro-Ukraine, and they do that show every Tuesday and Friday to talk about that situation. But he does live in Canada and is a chess champion. And I want to say that his wife, and I'm trying to think of her first name. I know it begins with an N and all along those lines, but she is a multiple chess champion out of Canada and all in that space. But I was just wondering your take, and if you were ever involved in sports, and also how the weather is doing. Because like I said, we were dealing with some serious sizzling temperatures here in North Carolina, where I'm based at, and where Duke University is, which has some great medical research and everything. But I didn't see that there was some torrential rain last night, and I think early into this morning. And when I stepped outside, it looks like it's cooled the temperature down. And I'm looking now, it's saying that it's sunny and 77 degrees, which beats sunny and 95 feels like 100 and something. So how is the weather doing where you are? And also, how have you been doing in terms of when you were a youngster, if you were involved in any sort of sports or creative activities?
Okay. Thank you very much for having me, Mark. Are you able
Yes.
to hear me very well?
Yes, I can hear you very well.
As you said, my name is Francisca Epale. I live in Toronto, Ontario, Canada.
Uh-huh.
First of all, I'll tell you a little bit about my background. You must hear I have an accent.
Yes.
My late father came from Cameroon, West Africa.
Hmm.
My late mother came from Jamaica in the West Indies.
Uh-huh.
And I have lived on 4 different continents. I've lived in Africa, in Europe, in Asia, and in North America.
Hmm.
I am a former teacher. I taught ESL, English as a Second Language, and French for over 20 years in the United States, in Canada, and China, from middle school to university levels. I am also a former certified interpreter, and I'm also a speaker, and I am a certified health and life coach, and I am the author of 4 books.
Okay.
And the most popular book is How I Conquered Breast Cancer Without Chemotherapy: My Journey from a Mess to a Message. And there's a
Well,
medical disclaimer in the book. You asked me if I was involved in sports as a child. Yes,
yes.
I was involved. I used to play a little bit of basketball. I'm a really tall girl. I'm
Mhm.
5'11". My parents were both 5'10", and I'm
Wow.
5'11". And right now, as I am a breast cancer thriver, I exercise daily with a fitness coach.
Oh, wow. That's important to exercise daily. One thing that you don't know about the network is I know that they're very big on the education system. They oftentimes talk about fiscal literacy and all along those lines. So now that I know that you are in the education space and definitely want to get to this cancer journey as well, I was just wondering your take as one that has taught, because actually I had a lady that was one of my guests on last week who has actually got a multitude of views on YouTube, but she teaches English as a second language to a lot of non-English speakers and all along those lines. And she has had a tremendous success in that space. And I want to say she was from Eastern Europe and all in that kind of space. So she might have been like either from Poland or one of those other areas in that kind of Eastern European theater, but I just wanted your take because I do know that that's something that the network founders Kim Calhoun and Nick Balveda are big on, is this notion of whether we are teaching enough in our society about important issues, including health and all along those lines. So I just wanted your take on the North American education system.
My take on the North American education system, in my opinion, it is easier than in some countries. When I went to university, I did my post-secondary education in the United States. I lived in the United States prior to moving to Canada, and I found the education to be very easy. I remember I was in class with an African student, and we were doing multiple choice. I think it was biology. So after he finished it, he asked the professor, "May I have the part two?" The professor said, "What part two? This is multiple choice. This must be part one. Where's part two? The real stuff, the essay." "No, this is all the tests." He said, "This is university. You call this a test?" I told him to take it easy. This is America. Don't challenge the professor. So you see, it's a different kind of system. I found American education to be very easy. It wasn't challenging. I did my bachelor's in 3 years, my master's in 2 years. I found it easy.
Wow, that's what I've heard some people say, is that they find it harder in other countries, even in some of the European countries, and even it sounds like in some of the African countries, if your classmate was wanting a part two and all along those lines, because I know that sometimes people are wanting to actually see maybe some more difficulty in our testing system and all along those lines. I was just wondering about the health part of it, because I do remember when I was going to school and everything, and I'm in my early 60s and all in that space, actually just recently turned 62 and all along those lines. So I was just wondering, I do remember that there were health courses even when I was taking courses in rural North Carolina, because I went to high school and junior high in rural North Carolina. I do remember there was a number of like health awareness courses, and even though I have no kids of my own, I have 2 nephews, and I need to check with them because I'm not sure that they get as much health education as possibly we did. And of course, you can find a lot of things, including how to deal with different health ailments online as well. But I just wanted your take on not just here, but worldwide, how we are doing in terms of teaching our young people about their health concerns.
Well, that's a good question. In my opinion, there's never enough taught. You always have to teach. They teach health, but they don't usually teach too much. If I am not aware of a classroom that they teach you about cancer,
Right.
because cancer is number one deadly disease. And according to the American Cancer Society and the Canadian Cancer Society, 1 out of 8 women will be diagnosed with breast cancer in their lifetime. And 1 out of 2 people will be diagnosed with some form of cancer in their lifetime. 1 out of 100 men will be diagnosed with breast cancer in their lifetime, and every 10 minutes, a woman somewhere in the world is diagnosed with breast cancer.
Oh, wow. You know, that high, I didn't know it was high and everything. But one of the things you just mentioned, which I think people forget and everything along those lines, because we definitely hear conversations about how gender plays a role, as does race, in the way that people are treated and all along those lines. And one of the things that I've heard people talk about is the fact that breast cancer isn't just a one gender disease, because while we might not have the breast as profound as the woman does, definitely there is a known fact that men have a breast area as well, and that breast area can be impacted by cancer also. So I just wondered if you had learned something about that, because you even gave some of those statistics and everything, and I do know that men can suffer from breast cancer as well.
Yes, it is a known fact that some men too, they also have breast cancer, but not as frequently as women. 1 out of 100 men will have breast cancer in their lifetime. It's mostly women who usually suffer from breast cancer.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense and everything. Just out of curiosity, with breast, because one of the things I hear about breast cancer, and like I said, I think it came up with some of my friends, and I mentioned that I do have some friends that have dealt with it, some that have gone the more radical route of mastectomies and all along those lines, but sometimes it is hereditary. So I was just wondering, was there a hereditary aspect to the breast cancer even in your own family and everything? Because I do know that that is something that can play a role. Because maybe if a family member had it, then you may be more susceptible to it and everything. Or was it something that came about later in life? Or was it something that you were aware of because of having a history of breast cancer in your family?
Yes, you are right about that. Breast cancer, there are 10 risk factors for breast cancer, but I won't mention all of them. It's in the book. One
Right.
of them is genetics. I have lost 5 family members, both nuclear and extended, to cancer, to different kinds of cancer. So when I was diagnosed with breast cancer, it did not come as a shock because I have a family history. But based on my research, American Cancer Society states that 85% of women have suffered from breast cancer who did not have any family history of breast cancer. So it can go both ways as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It can go both ways and
Yeah.
all along those lines. I know that when it comes to breast cancer and just when it comes to health in general, there are a number of myths that are out there as well. So I just wonder, what are some of the myths before we get to the myths around curing it? Because like I said, some people are feeling they are almost rushed into getting a mastectomy or some of the other more radical kind of cures. But what are some of the myths that you found just about breast cancer in general, not even the myths around the curing of the breast cancer, but what are some of the myths that surprised you as you were writing your book that people have about breast cancer in general?
Okay, thank you. Before I talk about the myths, I have to say that I am not a medical doctor. I am not an oncologist. I'm a certified health and life coach. So if you're diagnosed with cancer, please seek medical attention.
Right.
From my research, the major 3 myths that people have about breast cancer that it can only be cured by 1, chemotherapy, 2, radiation,
Mm.
and 3, tamoxifen, which is a drug. But there are alternatives because when you go to the doctor, there are 4 things you have to keep in mind. Ask intelligent questions. The first thing you have to you have to talk about is what is the diagnosis. It means what is the illness. The second one is what is the treatment. The third one, what are the possible side effects? And the fourth question you have to ask, what are the alternative treatments? Many people go to the doctor, they don't take a notepad, they just listen to what the doctor says.
Right.
But you have to use wisdom and ask for alternative treatment. Or you do your own research because they might not tell you, because the doctors are trained to diagnose, to prescribe, and to refer you to specialists.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, one of the things that I've heard people say, and I don't know your take on this, but as one that wrote the book, you probably have some interesting views about this and everything. Is like I said earlier, I live here in Durham, North Carolina, which is the home of Duke University, and one of our kind of nicknames that people have for Durham is the city of medicine, and part of the reason it is given that diagnosis or that term and everything is because of the hospitals here that are oftentimes Duke controlled, but also because of the extensive kind of pharmaceutical companies. I mean, GlaxoSmithKline is here, Bristol Myers is here, and a number of others are here. Pfizer that did the COVID, one of the COVID pills is here as well. So I was just wondering, from your perspective and everything, what is your thoughts? Because one of the things that people complain about, and you kind of alluded to that in what you just said and everything, is that we are so dependent on drugs and everything that is oftentimes the first thing that people go to. They don't think about natural cures or holistic cures. They think about what medicine they can get to deal with them. And some people would argue that that's part of what the medical establishment encourages and everything. But I was just wondering your take on that. And do you think that we, as particularly in the West, have become too dependent on going into medicine and kind of like going for the pill version of a cure?
Yes, it's true. There are many people who like to take medication, but you have to know that if you do your research, there are alternatives.
Right.
They usually say, let food be your medicine.
Mm-hmm.
Some people, if they have a headache, they go for the aspirin. You don't need to take the aspirin if you have a headache. If you
Right.
If you have a headache, take a nap, take a shower, eat something. But
Right.
everyone just goes straight for the Tylenol or the aspirin. You don't have to. So some people, they like medication, but you can do research. There are alternative treatments. The doctors may not tell you, but they themselves, they go to the. I have people in my family who are in the healthcare system.
Mhm.
Some of these doctors don't want you to go and do alternative treatment, but they themselves, they go behind your back.
Mm.
So you've got to use them, wisdom. You have to do your own research,
Yeah, that
and
makes sense.
you also have to know your patient bill of rights.
Yeah.
The patient bill of rights states that you have the right to refuse treatment. In
Mhm.
the Western world, if a doctor recommends something, it's just a recommendation. You don't necessarily have to do it.
Mhm.
All right, these are just suggestions. Again, I'm not a medical doctor, I'm not an oncologist. I'm just sharing my journey. I have
Mhm.
exercised my patient bill of rights 4 times. I refuse treatment and I'm still alive. That's just me. I do my research.
You definitely have to do your research. One of the things that I was curious about, because my own mother, who is now, I have to remember the age 82, and dad is 84, and they've definitely had their own health journeys and are still dealing with various health issues and everything. I mean, mom is dealing with some stuff with her eye, and dad is dealing with some stuff with his heart and everything. But I do know that one of the things that they will be quick to do, and I think that it's kind of to your point, we don't do enough and everything, is that they will sometimes take a moment to and educate the doctors or even the nurses. I remember that one time, and this might have been about a year or two ago, when mom was in the hospital for a simple procedure and everything. And I think the doctor was getting ready to give her something that was going to be, she was going to have a negative reaction to in terms of the food that they were going to give her and everything along those lines. And versus chastising the person, she took it as an opportunity to educate the nurse on why that was not a good move and why that was something that she did not need to do in that particular situation. But I don't know that everybody is as quick to do that and all along those lines. So how much do you think it is important for us to be our own advocates? Because that's literally what I think mom was doing, was being her own advocate in her own treatment and everything. So as one that has gone through this breast cancer journey, how important do you think it is to be your own advocate?
That's a very good question. It's important to be your own advocate because it is your own body.
Mm-hmm.
Because when they sent me to an oncologist to go and do chemotherapy, he gave me 2 options. Francisca, I'll give you 2 options. One, we can cut off your breast and hope for the best. Hope for the best. It means he's not too sure.
Right.
Or we can remove the lump and do chemotherapy. I used wisdom. I said, I want you to remove the lump and do chemotherapy. So after they had removed the lump, he told me about the chemotherapy. I have to come for about 12 sessions, and I have to have somebody wait for me, and bring me home. And then the closest family member I had at that time lived 5 hours away.
Wow.
I had my brother who lives in Ottawa, and he
Mm-hmm.
married with 2 children. He's not going to leave his family to come and be taking me to chemo. And at that
Right.
time, I did not have a full-time job. I did not have health insurance. So that's one of the reasons why I did not do a chemotherapy, because of that as well. So I told him that I have decided. Before I said no to chemotherapy, I asked him, so what are some of the side effects of chemotherapy? He said, apart from losing your hair, he said, oh, you can get tired. I said, I'm always tired, so that's not a side effect. So when I refused chemotherapy, this is what he said: I have been an oncologist for 25 years. No patient of mine has ever refused chemotherapy. I told him to relax, take it easy. I'm just exercising my patient bill of rights. Then he kept quiet. He said,
Mm-hmm.
okay, if you're not going to do chemotherapy, I want you to go downstairs and schedule yourself for radiation. I was polite and I said, okay. I already had in mind that I wasn't going to do it, but I just said, okay. I went downstairs and they told me what I had to do. Then I told the lady that I don't think I'm going to do radiation. I changed my mind. I don't think so. Fast forward a year later, after I had seen a naturopathic doctor, they told me to go back to the oncologist for a follow-up. And he said, "Oh my God, whatever that doctor did, he did a good job." So this is a guy who was upset that I did not do chemo. A year later, he says he was happy. "You are really good." And I had to go back again for the second year, and he was very happy. He said, "You don't need to see me again. You just need to see your family doctor." Ironically, 5 years later, I went to a book launch for a friend of mine, and I met a lady who said, "I know you. Are you not the lady who refused chemotherapy?" I said, "Yes." "So how are you doing now?" I said that I am better and I've written a book. She said, "I need to buy your book." I said, "When you buy this book, do not take it to the hospital. I don't want any oncologist to see the book." She said, "Okay." So she bought my book on the spot. So you
Well,
be your own advocate because it is your own body. Because when I refused the chemotherapy and the radiation, my family doctor said, "Okay, if you have refused that, then you should do some tamoxifen." I said, "No, I'm not taking it." He said, "Okay, it's your body."
yeah. That makes a lot of sense because you would know your body better than anybody else would know their body and all along those lines and everything. Now, one of the things I've heard people talk about, and like I said, so far, knock on wood, not had to deal with that particular health ailment and all along those lines. But I was just wondering your thoughts because one of the things, and you kind of alluded to it in one of your answers, that people are concerned about when they think about breast cancer treatment is the notion of vanity. Because I do know that some people will say that they don't want to deal with the chemotherapy, not saying in your case, because of the loss of hair. And I do know some women that, even though my friend did have that mastectomy, that there are some people, because that is such a vital part of the sexuality of women, and even to some degree the way that men treat women and everything, that they don't want to lose that part of their body, even though it's only one part of their body compared to the rest of the body and everything else, and the mind and the emotions and everything else in that space. But I was just wondering, how much do you think people get caught up in vanity when they are thinking about treatment, whether it's the loss of hair or whether it's the loss of the breasts and all in that space? So I was just wondering, how much do you think that people are too concerned about a vanity aspect?
It depends on the individual. I can
Mhm.
speak for myself. At
Mhm.
that time, I was sharing accommodation, so I did not want the person I was staying with
Right.
to face my problems of breast cancer.
Mhm.
Because if you lose your hair, you don't, but they're wigs. They have wigs. But I personally, after losing 5 family members to cancer, as a matter of fact, I had my brother who passed away 3 months after I was diagnosed with cancer. And he suffered cancer for 11 years. The chemo provoked 2 other cancers. So he had 3 different cancers, one after the other. And during his last days, he was so skinny. He was wearing diapers and he had tubes all over his body. And when the doctor came in the room, he asked him, "So, do you want to die in the hospital or do you want to die at home?" My brother just looked at him as if to say in his head, "Screw you. You're telling me that I'm going to die?" I think that was wrong. I asked a friend who is a nurse. She said, "They have the right to ask." I said, "No, not so bluntly like that. Ask the family, right?" Or you could ask, "When he enters the hospital, how would you like to transition?" The way he said it, he said, "Okay, you don't have to answer. We'll figure out something." He had lost so much weight, he had to use a walker.
Wow.
During his last days, they had to waive the visitation hours because my sister came from England, my brother came from Ottawa, Canada, I came from Toronto, Canada, and he had so many friends and family and co-workers who came to the hospital. They said they have never seen a patient who is so loved by many. So I saw what he went through. I said, "Is this what chemotherapy does to you?" I decided not to do it. I think I did the right choice. It's my body. Whatever I choose to do on my body is nobody business but mine. I didn't
That
want
makes a
to
lot.
lose my hair. I'm a proud person. I didn't want to lose my hair and wear the wigs because those wigs itch. They itch you as well.
That makes a lot of sense and everything. And to your point, and all along those lines, I remember that I had a friend that passed away not that long ago, and everything in that space. But she actually lived longer than she was expected to live and everything. Because I sometimes think, and I don't know your opinion about this, is that it's also to some degree, not saying that health is not important and everything, but I also think that it's a mindset. Because I want to say that she lived maybe a year or two past what she was diagnosed with, because she did have a terminal illness, and the illness did eventually take her away from this planet and this earth and everything. But I think she lived about a year or two past what people were expecting her to live, and part of that was that she is very much grounded in some kind of her belief system, but also in the things that she was passionate about. And I think she kept those passions going and her interests going up until her dying days and everything. So I'm just wondering, how much do you think mindset is important in our health journey as well? Because like I said, Michelle Gonzalez Green was the young lady's name. And I think she did wind up living about a year or two past what the doctors had told her she would live till and everything.
Mindset is important in everything, not only health, in business, in your
Mm-hmm.
career, in everything in life. If you have the right mindset, you can do well. As a matter of fact, I'm going to reveal a family secret. My
Mm-hmm.
cousin told me that after my brother died, she said that he told her that the doctors had given him 5 years to live. I
Right.
said, I didn't know that. He told me in confidence, I am his cousin, extended family. You are his sister. He's not going to tell you that because he knows that you won't handle it. But he had lived past the 5 years. So
Right.
he knew he wasn't going to live long. So that was a family secret that he told only my cousin, but told her not to tell us.
Right.
Another secret that I will share, a family secret, when he was diagnosed with cancer, he sent an email to all his siblings and told us not to tell our mother. Our father had passed away. Our mother was a nurse and he was her favorite child. So if she knew that her son had cancer, it would lead her to a quick grave, and she worries a lot. So my mother died without knowing that her son had cancer. So
Well,
certain secrets, it didn't hurt anybody, right? It was
right.
a family secret we kept amongst the brothers and sisters. So if they give you a lifespan that you only have 5 years to live, he went to Mexico for his 60th birthday and he had so much fun. I'm sure he knew that he wasn't going to live long because he told us that he asked his doctor, how much longer do I have to live? I am more than 5 years. He said, well, the doctor was smart and did not want to tell him. He said, I cannot tell you exactly when you're going to die. I don't know. He he covered it up. I'm sure he knew, but he didn't want to tell him that he was going to die. He just said, I can't tell you exactly when you're going to die. I don't know. They covered it up because they knew he was going to die.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and a lot of people will do that and everything along those lines. But like you said, a lot of times it's mindset. I know that one of the other things that I've heard people talk about, and right now I think that my aunt is kind of defying that rule, and it kind of comes back to your mom and your brother, the favorite son, and everything along those lines. Because I know one of the things we oftentimes hear people talk about is how if there is a spouse, if one spouse passes away, that
Yeah.
very shortly the other spouse will pass away, depending on how close they were. But I know
Yes.
that in my two aunts' cases, that they are very close to their um, other half and all along those lines. And they have now been going multiple years with their spouses having passed. I think in one case it might have been a year and a half, and in the other case it's probably been about 2.5 years. And both of them seem to be in relatively good health. And I don't think that they are having any danger of not being here and everything. But like you said, nobody knows the day or time of anything in that space and all along those lines. But I just wanted your thoughts, because there are definitely some notions that if people are close, that if one passes, the other one will be not far behind. But the whole question of mindset, I think a lot of it has to do with mindset. And if you've got a will to live and a reason to live, and I know that in both of the cases of the aunts that I'm thinking about, they've got grandkids as well as, I want to say, in some cases, even great grandkids that they would like to see how far they can see them develop before they decide to make that next journey and everything in that space. But I just wanted your take about the closeness when people are close together, like your mother and your brother.
When you are close with somebody, it will affect you. I'll give you an example. When my brother passed away, for the next for 8 weeks, I was becoming very forgetful. I'll forget my keys. I forget this. I go upstairs. I forgot what I was going to take until my sister said, "Go and see your doctor." My doctor referred me to a neurologist and they did some tests and I passed. He said, "Did you just lose anybody recently?" I said, "Yes." "Who was that?" "Your brother." "That's why you're grieving." It's a form of grief. Because I was so close to him, I kept looking at his picture because I took a photograph when he was in the mortuary. I asked permission. May I take a photograph? I took a photo, and every time I was looking at his picture, my friend said, "What are you looking at all the time?" She said, "You can't do that. You're going to keep thinking about." And she said that I'm going to do something. Delete. I said, "Why you delete it?" She said, "Because every minute you're looking at him, you're going to keep thinking, thinking. So when you're close to somebody, it does affect when you're going to die for some people. Because I've heard of some people who have been married for 50 years. When one of them dies, some of them die of 2 hours after, 1 week after, 1 month, some 3 months after. It all depends on the mindset. But on the other hand, I also heard of somebody, I cannot remember his name. They told him he has only 3 months to live. It's a very important person. I can't remember. He began to watch comedy movies all day long and he laughed and laughed and laughed. He didn't die again. So he changed his mindset. He said he's not going to die. He's going to watch movies. He didn't die. They gave him 3 months to live, but he did not die. So it's all mindset. Everything in life is mindset.
No, definitely everything in life is truly mindset, and all along those lines, there's no doubt about that. One of the things I've talked about on this show and other shows, and I'd love to hear your thoughts around this, is I also think that it's important to try to have as much as possible some sense of alignment. Like I don't consider myself to be overly religious, but I do consider myself to be spiritual, and I know that we are all beings of a multiple dimension. We are spiritual, emotional, physical, and mental. And I think that we have to do our best to make sure that we have some alignment in all four of those aspects of our life and everything. But I just wanted your take on that, and how much do you try to make sure that you have some alignment in all of those aspects, whether you are an avid churchgoer or mosque goer or not, or whether you are one that is like myself that just kind of like tries to have your own connection with nature and connection with the spirit and all along those lines. But I just wanted your take as to how important is it to have that alignment in your mind.
That's a very good question. I did have a sense of alignment because I baked in the sun. I like to sit in the sun because that's one way you can cure your cancer, because we are dark skinned. We don't get enough vitamin D. We live in Canada. That's one way. Another thing, yes, I am religious. I'm a Christian. As a matter of fact, when I was diagnosed with breast cancer, I told my pastor and I said I want his wife to be there. So after church, I told him that I have been diagnosed with breast cancer, and his wife put her right hand on my right breast and he prayed. He said, "Sister Francisca, you will not die, you shall live. You will not die, you shall live to share your testimony." And that helped me. I was very strong. As a matter of fact, I have a chapter in my book, The Power of Faith. It's in the book.
Yeah, that power of faith is very important. I know a lot of people talk about that and how important that faith walk is, and how
Yes.
important it is to have a sense of a greater purpose and all along those lines. If somebody had told you when you were a youngster that this would be part of your journey, because it seems like part of your journey, at least in this stage in your life, is to help educate people as a health coach and everything along those lines. If the younger you had a chance to talk to the older you now, do you think that they would believe you that you were going on this kind of walk of faith and this kind of purpose in life, or was there a different purpose that you felt you had then versus what you have now, and how important is that purpose in your own life and purpose just both in the past and even now?
I wouldn't, that's a good question. I wouldn't have known, but I think there is a reason why I am still alive, because this might sound strange. I missed dying 6 times. So God is keeping me alive for a purpose. So this book that I wrote, it can help somebody else. So, it tells you a lot of what I did to cure my cancer using natural remedies. Again, I'm not an oncologist, I'm not a medical doctor. This is just my journey.
Right.
So my book can help somebody, even if you don't have cancer. 1 out of 2 people will be diagnosed with cancer in their lifetime. This is just for general knowledge. Educate yourself, because many people are doing things that they shouldn't do that causes cancer. But there are certain things that I have stopped doing. Okay, I'll give you an example. I cleansed my body organs. One of them, I cleansed my liver. I did a liver cleanse and I lost 5 pounds because
Right.
I had so much dirt inside me. And when you do a liver cleanse, you have to stay by the bathroom. Literally stay by the bathroom. When I was sharing accommodation, my roommate asked me, "Oh, I want you to go downstairs and help me with something in the basement." I said, "I have just done a liver cleanse. I have to be by the bathroom." She was begging. She said, "Please, it won't be for long." I said, "I really cannot go. I'm supposed." She begged and pleaded. I said, "Okay." I went downstairs, and after a few minutes, I felt something. I said, "I gotta go." She said she's never seen me run so fast. I had to run. The thing was coming down. So,
Right.
those are one of the things I did. Cleansing my organ, detoxification, detox your organ.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What advice? Because I do have some family members that are dealing with different journeys of their health. I've definitely got some family members that one that passed away of MS, and I've got some others that are dealing with it now and everything. But what advice would you give to folks that are going through various health journeys in terms of how they can do a better job of their health journey, given that you aren't a doctor or an oncologist and everything, but just general advice? What advice would you give to folks that are facing their different health journeys?
That's a good question. My advice is do your own research.
Mhm.
The doctors will not tell you everything. Okay, they will tell you what they know. You do your own research because it is your body. Look at the pros and the cons, or you can discuss it with your family members, your partner, your brother, sister, parents, if they're still alive. It is your body, and you have to face the consequences. So do your own research.
That makes a lot of sense. John, coming back to the book and everything, it's a book that is definitely getting some notice. You mentioned that you've written some other books as well, but this particular book, How I Conquered Breast Cancers Without Chemotherapy, My Journey from a Mess to a
A
Message.
message.
What,
Yeah.
yeah, what exactly caused you to write this book and everything? Was it a message that you received? Some people, and I am a believer in ancestors, will say that we get messages from ancestors. There will be others that say that we get messages from God Himself and all along those lines. So, what is the reason that you decided to write this book, and what is the impetus for writing the book?
I'm very happy you asked me this question. There are 3 major reasons I wrote this book, or actually 4. The first one I read in 2012, a Jamaican lady who also had stage 2 breast cancer. She cured her cancer without using chemotherapy. And I reached out to her. I wrote her an email if I could use her name in my book.
Mhm.
She said, "Go ahead." Her name, she's all over the internet. Her name, she's now a naturopathic doctor. Her name is Dr. Deborah Williams.
Mhm.
And she used a formula called New Start. New, N stands for nutrition, E for exercise, W for water, S for sunshine, T for temperance, A for air, R for rest, and T, trust in God. So that was the first reason. She was my first inspiration. I said, if she is in Jamaica and she can cure her cancer without using chemotherapy, I am in Canada, a developed country. I could be able to do the same. The second reason why I chose to write the book, I had to seek legal advice because I was afraid that FDA or oncologists will come after me when they see the book. And the lawyer said, no, write it in simple English, conversational, gentle. Do not attack anybody. Do not attack
Mhm.
chemotherapy or do not attack the oncologist. Just share your journey. And if you don't write the book, you're selfish because your book might help somebody. And as a matter of fact, as I was writing the book, the publisher told me that he's going to get another coach to keep an eye on my book because he doesn't want to get sued, neither does he want me to get sued. So that's the second inspiration, my lawyer. The third inspiration was I had lost 5 family members to cancer. I wanted to break the generational pattern.
Hmm.
So when I spoke to a family member, they said, "You didn't count well, there were 6. But for the purposes of this podcast, I wrote 5, so I'll just say 5. I
Yeah.
lost 5 family members. They all had cancer or different forms of cancer, including breast cancer. So I did not want to be the number 6 person. So I chose to do natural remedies and to write a book to share with others that there is hope, that breast cancer is not a death sentence if it is caught early.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You mentioned natural remedies. I know a lot of people that are into various forms of natural remedies. Definitely here in the South, here in the United States, there are a number of people that will look at different things, including different plants that they feel can do a better job of cures and everything. You had asked me earlier when we first came on about ethnicity, and it's mostly may not be able to tell because of the light skin, but we in the African American tradition come in various shades and everything. So it is majority African American, just on the lighter skin complexion. But I do have relatives and some bloodline that is both the European and Native American, and I do know that both of those, both the African American and the Native American side, are very much involved in natural cures and have been involved in natural cures for a number of years. I remember even growing up hearing about the medicinal purposes and reasons around something called poke salad and all along those lines, and even dandelions and other things that had
Yes.
medicinal purposes. But I was just wondering, what are some of the natural remedies that you have been dealing with, and what are some natural remedies that you can give advice to people that they might want to consider if they are looking at their own cancer diagnosis or just their own health journey in general?
Some of the natural remedies is the sun, the sunshine.
Hmm.
You need to you need some sunshine. Go out, because I even have a friend who said that her husband was never sick. I said, why? Because he will always sit on the veranda, on the porch, and the sun will hit him. Sun is good. It's a myth that sun will give you, it depends. Now, again, I'm not a doctor. I'm just saying for my journey, I soaked in the sun. When I go to the grocery store, I park far away so I can walk in the sun. I don't always like to park close. I'm a different kind of person. Most people want to park close by, but I park far so I can walk in the sun, and I walk slowly. I go for walk. I exercise. I have a fitness coach. I work with him every day. We do different exercises. I go swimming. I use the aerobics stepper. I climb the stairs. There are different exercises that I do. Those are some of the natural remedies. Some people don't exercise enough, or they don't exercise at all. I know of some people who they said, "Oh, I'm married. I don't need to exercise." I said, "That's not enough exercise. Whatever you're thinking of."
Yeah, that can't be enough exercise. You can only do that for a limited amount of time anyway, and it's not going to take the place of other exercises as well. Now, one of the things that we've heard a lot of people talk about in the West, we heard it during the pandemic, and we definitely have heard it since then. And I will admit that it's one of the things that I am guilty of as well. And everything is, I'm imagining, and I don't know this because I don't know you in the sense of like personally knowing you and everything, that you probably are a decent cook or maybe even a great cook. And I know a lot of times, even during the pandemic, we had a number of people, myself included, that were too quick to rush to DoorDash or Grubhub or the various fast food outlets and all along those lines. So how much do you think it is important for us to have a balanced diet? I know that that's something that used to be regularly taught in high schools and colleges, but I don't even know if people even pay attention to that notion of a balanced diet and making sure that we are aware of what we're putting into our stomachs and all in that space. So what is your take on the importance of a balanced diet to the health journey as well?
It's very important to have a balanced diet. Many people say that I don't look my age. If I tell you I look much younger than my age. Let your food be your medicine. Don't always rush for the medicine. Food. It's important to have a balanced diet. Like everything in life. You need work-life balance.
Right.
Just like your food, you need to have a balanced meal to prevent you from having illnesses and to make you look fit and strong. Because some people, they get sick too because they're eating the wrong types of food. And some people look older because they don't eat the right types of food. So it's important to have a balanced diet so that you will be fit, you know, and you can do your work well.
Speaking of work-life balance, I know because a good friend of mine is on one of our other shows talks about the importance of honesty and all along those lines. But I was wondering how much is the kind of animosity and letting other negativities impact our health as well? Because I've heard a lot of people that are either pro one candidate or pro another candidate, and sometimes I feel that they let the toxins that go into the whole battle of even putting up with a opinion around a number of issues, whether that's on abortion, whether that's on things that the LGBT community might be thinking about, or whether Trump or Biden should be president and everything. So how much do you think that negative energy can also impact our health as well? Because I personally think that a lot of times we spend too much time worrying about things that we may not have any control over one way or the other and everything. So I just wondering how much does negativity, even negativity at the job, because I know sometimes we get caught up in work politics as well. So how much does negativity hurt in our health journey?
Some people, they have done research. I was reading a book, I can't remember the book, where there were two people, two prisoners.
Mm-hmm.
One looked up and saw the stars. One looked down and saw mud. So the
Mm-hmm.
person, so the prisoner who looked up and saw the stars was hopeful. The person who looked down and saw mud was pessimistic. Negativity is not good at all. It's always good to be around positive people. Because when you are negative, that's one reason why my brother could survive 11 years with cancer. That's a long time to survive with cancer because he was positive. He read that if you are ill and you're negative, it can lead you to a quick grave.
Mm-hmm.
So do the things that you enjoy doing. He used to travel still, even though he had cancer. He traveled. There was even a time when he was on sick leave for 6 months, and he was in the hospital bed, and he saw they were terminating people from his job. He called his boss. Do I still have a job? She said, not only do you have a job, you have a promotion upon your return. So you have to be positive in every aspect of life, be it your career, your finances, your health, your physical state, mental, spiritual. You have to be positive.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I know that one things people will do sometimes is there's this whole notion of a bucket list. There was a whole movie, I think it starred Morgan Freeman, if I remember correctly, and everything along those lines and everything. But it's the notion of as you get older, it's some things that you were hoping to do that you maybe had not got to do. So you go out with this notion of accomplishing a bucket list. I've got a friend, and they're actually going with their mom, I think to someplace overseas. I can't remember whether it's Italy or something along those lines. But one of the things that they are hoping to do is to go on a hot air balloon, because some things that are on people's bucket list might be even appealing to me, because I could see definitely going and floating in the air in a basket. That seems relatively safe. I don't know. I've had some friends that have tried it, that I want to fall out of a plane and the whole skydiving thing, because that seems a little bit more risky. Not saying that a hot air balloon isn't risky, but the falling out of a plane seems more risky. And then I've got some folks that have contemplated hang gliding, and I'm kind of on the border as to whether I would try that one. I know that I'm not, at least now, going to try skydiving, at least not on my bucket list, if you want to go by that bucket list term and everything. So I was wondering, one, what do you think about people that try to do these daredevil things as they are either rebonding with family members, or if they are feeling that there is toward the end of life and everything? And in that same space, what would be on Francesca's own personal bucket list? Not that we're thinking that there's going to be any time in the near future that you're not going to be here, but what would be on your own personal bucket list?
That's a good question. Those who want to go and do those adventurous things like bungee jumping and zip lining, to each his own. I don't do those kind of dangerous things because some of those people have died in the process. I've heard of a bungee jumper who the cord broke and he fell and died. But to each his own, right?
Right.
What is on my own bucket list right now? Let me think. That's a good question. To meet Oprah. If Oprah Winfrey can lay her hands on my book so that many people can buy this book, it
Mhm.
will help a lot of people. Because it saved my life. Reading is good. If I had not read about that lady in Jamaica, I wouldn't have known about it. So I would like this to be in the hands of many people. So if I could get Oprah Winfrey to get a hand of my book so that it would be in a book club, that's one thing on my bucket list.
Well, ironically, two things that could possibly help that happen. I'm not saying that it would happen and everything, but let me just share two stories with you. One that involves a sadder version, and the other one that may give you some hope of that possibility and everything. But there was a time, and this was well before the pandemic, that there was a gentleman that was doing some development in the downtown area, and particularly around the African American community and all along those lines. And he definitely put up a big sign that said that we want Oprah, because he was trying to get Oprah to come here to Durham, North Carolina. Unfortunately, he was killed before that desire could be realized and everything along those lines. So he wasn't even like able to do it because of a natural death. It was actually an unnatural death that happened, and that's the reason that it did not happen. And I won't say that that was multiple decades ago, but people still, one of the buildings, even though it's changed ownership two or three times, it is still known as the Oprah Building, because people literally remember that that was the sign that he put on the wall, and everything on the like outside of the building was "We want Oprah" and all in that space. So it is now to this day probably forward known as the Oprah Building. One of the things that can tell you about Durham is Durham has a very rich history, and part of that rich history is around race relations, because it's one of the original Black Wall Streets, along with Tulsa and even to some degree Central Park in New York, and Rosewood down in Florida, and a number of other places that were affluent and all along those lines. And part of that affluency was that both the Black elite and the white elite kind of merged and kind of like had some intermingling that went on. So one of those families is the Spalding family, and all in that space. And it is my understanding that one of the members of the Spalding family, because he's actually come down to North Carolina to speak a couple of times at North Carolina Mutual and a couple of other places, is a gentleman that you may know, named Stedman Graham. So Stedman Graham
I met
is
him.
Oprah's long time other half, and all in that space. So he has some ties to North Carolina. So I can see if I can reach out to some people that may know Stedman, and who knows, maybe you and Stedman listen to this show from time to time. So maybe that is an end around way that maybe we can see if the book can get to Oprah and everything. Because I actually did a social work conference. It was about how people that are in the social work field can also go after money, because it was about investments and funding and different jobs that social workers can have as well. So there's a number of social workers from around the country. I think some even in Canada, and maybe even other parts of the world as well. But that took place, I think it was last October, if my memory is serving me correctly. And Stedman was the keynote speaker. So I may even have Stedman's address somewhere as well, because of being the producer of that said festival, and the organizers of that festival came on this network a couple of times as well. So like I said, it's a long shot, but hey, long shots have happened even in the horse races. So I'm not saying that will happen. I'm not even saying that he'll listen to anything that I say, but I can at least put it out there in the universe, and we can see if anybody that is listening to this show may also know Stedman and can get it into the hands of Oprah, or maybe they know some other Oprah people like Gayle King and others. So that just because you wish it doesn't mean it can't happen. So it could possibly still happen, and all along those lines. So I know we got a few more minutes to go before I get ready to wrap up and everything. I've certainly enjoyed this conversation, as I thought I would, and everything, but I just wondered if people are interested in getting the book, and then a couple other questions I was going to get to as well before we totally wrap and everything. How would they obtain your book, and how would they get the book? And if you want to share your mission statement at that time as well, I'm sure people would be interested in that as well. But how would folks actually obtain your book?
Very good. My book is available on Amazon, both as an ebook and as a hard copy. And my mission statement is helping women get confidence in navigating their health options.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's a great mission and everything. there's a question I get to ask everybody on all of the shows that I do and everything, and I'll get to that as well. But before I get to that, I was just wondering what words of wisdom would you give to the women that are listening and just to the audience in general? And then the question that I usually ask would be something similar, but it may have a different twist based on the way I ask it and everything. But what words of wisdom would you give to folks that are interested in your words of thought?
Final words of wisdom. Every woman of childbearing age, go for mammograms and ultrasounds. However, they are not 100% accurate, so you need to touch your breast. Do self breast examination. Don't be scared of touching your breast. If you're scared of touching your breast, ask your partner. If you don't have a partner, go to your doctor. But if you have a male doctor, you don't want to be going every time for him to touch your breast. Otherwise, he might think you're a little bit cuckoo. Okay, your body part. Don't be scared. Some of you women, you have a pole, you go swinging on the poles, you go bungee jumping, you go snorkeling, you go skydiving. Those are dangerous sports. If you cannot touch your breast, just hire me and I'll show you how to do it. Massage your breast. Every time you are in the shower, put your hand up, lay flat, touch your breast because mammograms do not catch it 100%. I was the one who found the lump. The mammogram failed to catch it. And remember, breast cancer is not a death sentence if it is caught early. And if you want me to come and speak at your association, your church, your organization, sorority, women's conference, my website is right there, www.franciscaepale.com. You can keep in touch with me.
That makes a lot of sense. Do you think that a lot of times we as a society put too much stereotypes on the importance? I kind of alluded to that earlier, even when I mentioned my friend that had the mastectomy, and I know that there is a lot of the way that we treat women and make them objectification is the word I was looking for of women because of certain body parts, the breast being the most notable. I mean, the other part you can't really see unless you're being intimate with the person and everything. But I'm just wondering, do you think that we pay too much attention to kind of the object nature of the feminine energy and everything? Because I know a lot of people, even in Durham and around the country, that are obsessed with that part of the body and everything. So I just wondering your take on that, and if that's something that we as a society need to do better with.
Yes, they seem to. I have interviewed some women, they said that they don't touch their breasts. When I spoke to my roommate, my former roommate, she said, "Oh, I don't touch my breast. Why? Because I'm afraid I might find something that I don't want to know." I said, "But don't you want to know if something is wrong to prevent it?" She said, "No, I'm scared to touch my own breast. Why would I?" I said, "A man can easily hold his, without any problems. They're watching a movie and their hand can go down and they touch it. Why can't you touch your breast? It's your body. Why are you ashamed for? Massage it." A nurse said you should massage it 50 times, 25 clockwise and 25 anti-clockwise. Massage it as part of your self-care. You need to massage the breasts.
Yeah, you definitely got to do that. And sometimes you can even get, as you just said earlier, the partner to help in the cure and the kind of medication and the treatment as well. But you don't want them doing kind of the grabbing and groping action as well, because I do know some men that will maybe get a little bit carried away in that space if you give them too much of a leeway and everything along those lines. But I was really wondering, because even if you look at TV commercials, a lot of times they are putting out a certain standard of beauty, and part of that standard of beauty is what they feel is a successful breast size. And I don't know many women. I mean, some women have 36, 24, 36, if I can use that old line from Brick House, but there are a number of women that are quite well and they're doing quite well in their relationships that may not be that natural, that size that was glamorized by a number of people, including some of our Hollywood starlet types and everything along those lines. So I was just wondering, do you feel that we sometimes even get caught up in the whole conversation around size and dimensions? Because I've seen some small-breasted women that have also faced breast cancer, and sometimes they feel like they are not given enough of a credit because, not every woman is born with the same sizes and all along those lines. So just wondering your take on that, because it does seem like society is trying to push a certain stereotype out there.
Thank you very much for that question. That's a good question. Some women have big butts, others have small butts.
Right.
Whether you have big breasts or small breasts, if a man wants to marry you, the breast is not one of them that they consider. They consider different factors because you could have big breasts and you don't have anything upstairs. You could have
Right.
small breasts. You can. What they're looking for is not the breast size. So don't look at breast size as being important. It's important, but not. It should not make so that you cannot survive because you don't have any control about how your breasts are. But some people go and do breast augmentation, and in the process, they die on the table. They put all those plastic, silicone, and all that. God did not make you to have all those. Some people go and do breast augmentation or breast reductions, and I've heard of some people have died in the process. So leave them as God made you. If He made you small breasted, just leave it like that. I don't think people should be doing breast augmentation because those things have side effects, but to each his own.
Because I'm imagining some of those side effects, and I don't know this for a fact because like you, I'm not a doctor or an oncologist, but I imagine that in some cases, those side effects could even lead to some of the cancers that we're talking about. Because if you're injecting some foreign things into your body, it might even add to what happens in terms of the health of the body as well. So, like I said, I'm not saying because I'm not a plastic surgeon either. So there might be some reasons, even in terms of like being a part of a fire or part of other things that there might be reasons to have these surgeries and everything. But if you're doing it as a vanity project, you might be putting yourself at health risk and all along those lines. But like I said, I'm not a plastic surgeon or an oncologist, but I was just wondering your take on that as one that is a health coach. Do you think that some of these people could be putting themselves at risk?
Yes, they could definitely be putting themselves at risk. When they do any procedure, it's risky. But when you try to do things like to do breast augmentation, it might affect you eventually. There are different bras that can make you look bigger. Instead of you to go, in my opinion now, if instead of you to do a breast augmentation, buy a bra that makes you look bigger. There are different kinds of bras out there that make you look bigger. They could wear those instead. That's my opinion.
No, that makes a lot of sense, and that's a great opinion and everything. You had earlier mentioned, like I said, maybe about another 5 minutes, and then we'll wrap everything up. But you had earlier mentioned about the work-life balance, and that is something that I oftentimes talk about on this show and everything. Because one of the things we talk about is work-life balance and how you can have that work-life balance. Another thing we talk about on this show and other shows is this whole notion of the imposter syndrome. So I was just wondering, even when you wrote this book, with their family members, or even times that you had to deal with your own internal critic, because we all have an internal critic. I know that even in my own life, and like I said, I just recently hit the 62 mark, that there have been relationships that I have not pursued because I was having that whole inner conversation. And even to that part that you brought up about your, I think it was your cousin or one of your family members, and the job market and everything. There have been times that I have literally talked myself out of jobs, even though I was probably the better qualified person for the job, but I was having that whole internal critic. So I was just wondering, as you were writing this book, how did you deal with that internal critic? Because we all have an internal critic that will sometimes have us not do the things that we should do, whether that's in relationships, whether that's in jobs, whether that's even in our family dynamics. I've even seen internal critics hurt us in terms of family relationships. Don't have any kids of my own, but I've even seen that with nephews and with other people that are younger and everything. So I just wanted your take on how you personally coped with the inner critic.
Okay, could you rephrase that, please?
The inner critic is like that, what some people call in the coaching world the imposter syndrome. So the belief that you are not as good as you actually think you are and everything. So how have you dealt with that, or do you ever have that in your own life? Because I know some even business coaches and health coaches that sometimes have got this notion that they are not that they have self doubt. That's the word I was looking for. They have their own
Okay.
self doubt. And how did you address your own internal self doubt even when you were writing the book?
How did I address it? That's a good question. I have to think about that. How I address myself down. I have to think for about that. No one has ever asked me this question before, so I'm thinking.
No problem. Yeah, like I said, and different people have different answers. Like I said, some
Yeah.
people are thinking about how they draw on their God or draw on their internal
Okay.
situation, or some people think about different ways that they address their own
Okay.
self doubt. Because we all have self doubt, and like I
Yeah.
said, on your own personal status, but sometimes whether it's the dating life or whether it's the work
Yeah.
life, I mean, there probably have been even jobs that you have wanted to go for that you
Yeah.
talked yourself out of not going for the job.
How I address my own self doubt, I pray a lot.
Mhm.
I pray and I read the Bible and I ask God for a sign that if I'm supposed to do this, let this happen. For
Gotcha.
example, I'll tell you, a friend of mine said that, oh, Francisca, you like to stay home a lot. There's a party there. I want you to go. I said, no. She said, no, I have a ticket for you. I said, okay, let me think about it. So I told God, I said, God, I'm going to sleep. And if I wake up fresh, then I will go to the party. But if I take a nap and I wake up and I'm still tired, then I should not go to the party. And guess what? I slept and I woke up, I was still tired. I called my friend, I said, I don't think I'll make it. She said, thank you for letting me know I'll sell your ticket. So I went to God for him to tell me, should I go to this party or not? I woke up restless. So I pray a lot to God and I ask him for answers and I read the Bible as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and that's what a lot of people do. Is the way to conquer it is to figure out what God is telling them and everything in that space. I had earlier reference, and I know that some cultures, and particularly some African cultures, and you mentioned having that as part of your own family tree. So I was wondering, in addition to God, how important is your connection to your ancestors, including those that have passed away from this cancer journey and everything? Because I do know that in some, particularly African nations and even some Asian nations, it is very important to have that connection to the ancestors to this day. And she passed away way back in '82. I consider my grandmother to be one of my mentors, even though she's been away from this planet now for about 42 years and everything. But I learned a lot from her during the time that she was here. And who knows, some of the lessons may even come back in dreams and everything. But I just wondered, how important is that ancestral connection to you?
Ancestral connection is important, but however, I left Cameroon, West Africa, August 19th, 1984. So this year will make it 40 years.
Well,
And I regret to say I haven't returned to Cameroon because I hear the country has gone downhill. There's a lot of corruption. So I'm afraid I won't be able to cope. I'm scared even of going back. My parents have passed away. I lost a brother, I lost a cousin, lost an aunt, lost an uncle. So I've lost many ancestors. So I'm not actually too close to them as I would like to. Many of my ancestors have passed away.
gotcha. That makes a lot of sense and everything. But like I said, this has been a thoroughly enjoyable conversation. I'll have to get you to come back and everything along those lines. One of the things that I get all my guests to do at the end of the show, because the network, meaning Pod TV, is a global network, meaning there are people and shows from around the world, including Malaysia, Canada. We have a gentleman that comes in regularly on our news show from Australia. And there's some people even that on occasion come from New Zealand. We used to have a show come out of Nigeria, and definitely have guests from around the world and around the whole global community and all along those lines. So I am a big believer in positivity and messages of positivity and all along those lines. So call it my own ministry, for lack of a better term, and everything. But what message would you give in terms of positivity for this very divided world that we live in, where we see conflicts going all over the world and all over the not just nation of the United States, but in various other places as well? So what message of positivity would you give to our global community? And if you want to share one more time how you can be reached and how people can get the book. And by the way, I'll be adding the book. We do have a bookstore that is connected to Amazon. So I put all the guests. So I'll be sure to add your book, and actually books, because it's not the only book that you've written and everything, to those bookstore and everything. But what message of positivity would you give to our global community?
Thank you very much for having me. The message I will give to your global community is that in every negative situation, there is light at the end of the tunnel. As I'm a breast cancer thriver, I am a much better person. Ironically, I'm a much better person post cancer than pre cancer. My whole life is much better. Financially, spiritually, professionally, personally, mentally, emotionally, I am a much better person. So if anything negative happens to you, find a lesson. What did I learn from this? And find something positive. No matter how bad something is, there is something positive that you can learn from it. There is always light at the end of the tunnel.
No doubt about that. Well, speaking of light at the end of the tunnel, we're going to go out and I'm going to ask you just quickly if you want to tell folks how they can reach you. But as soon as you tell them that, then we're going to go out with Kendu Spice Promo, which is a all natural spice brand. And actually, the lady that created this brand is actually a co-host of a show that airs on Thursday and everything. So Shawnee Smith created this in honor of her own father, but she explains that in the ad and all along those lines. And we may play one other one as well. But definitely tell folks how they can get a copy of that book and how they can reach you if they're interested in reaching you for coaching. And like I said, I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. And I hope you enjoyed it as well. Did it go with some of the questions that you had mentioned and everything, but as you can tell with my journalism background, I like to free flow. So I probably asked some questions that you weren't expecting and everything, but I thought you did a masterful job. And I definitely appreciated this time for us to have this conversation.
Thank you very much. My book, How I Conquered Breast Cancer Without Chemotherapy, my journey from a mess to a message, can be found on Amazon. And if you live in Toronto, Canada, I have them here with me. We can meet up and I can autograph it because the whole of this week I'm off from work. And you can reach me on social media. I am on Facebook. I am on YouTube. I am on LinkedIn. I am on Instagram. And I have a website which is right here, www.franciscaepale.com. If you want me to come and speak about my book, or if you want to buy a book in bulk, if you invite me to speak and you want to order books in bulk, I'm also available for that as well. Thank you very much for having me.
No problem. Looking forward to hopefully having you back on some other shows as well. But this was a very enriching conversation. So we're going to go out with Kendu Spices and maybe one from Karen Bradford, who does some speaking things in terms of voiceover work and all along those lines. But definitely have enjoyed this conversation, and we're going to get on out of here. But a thoroughly great conversation with you, Francesca, and hopefully get a chance to have more conversations in the not too distant future.
All right. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to speaking with you again. Thank you very much again for inviting me on your show.
No problem. Glad to do it.
Okay.
You know how people love to enjoy food and don't understand how to flavor their food or how to replicate a meal? They're interested in supplements but don't know where to begin? Well, what I do is I take the guesswork out of enjoying flavor and wellness with my flavorful spice blends so that they can create delicious meals with healing benefits. Kendu Spice was created to help cooks at any level enjoy healing through food. Every spice blend was designed to give added health benefits of natural herbs. Every blend is complete. There's no need to add any additional spice for a delicious meal. Saving you time and money while adding supplements to your meals can be both tasty and fun. My earliest memories in the kitchen began with my father, Kenny Kendu Bond, so it was fitting that I would name this line after him. I have always looked to natural remedies to supplement the body, and I found myself hiding herbs and minerals in foods for my family. That's when it hit me. Everyone needs Kendu Spice. Everyone should be having this. It's an exclusive brand for cooks at any level who want to create flavorful dishes with healing benefits that can satisfy the body and soul. Add a little spice to your life. Give Kendu Spice a try.
The only trick you need to save time and money is to shop at Aldi. Aldi. Shop differently. Limitless length plus volume. Sensational from every angle. New Lash Sensational Sky High Mascara. Only from Maybelline, New York. Everything that touches your baby should be this comforting. Pampers Swaddlers, the #1 choice of hospitals, is 2 times softer. All right, Trivago, find me a hotel somewhere in Thailand where I can wake up with a view of the ocean. Awesome, the future. It's impossible to see. And when it's finally here, it might not be what you'd expect. It might just be better. Introducing Luxury Electric. Introducing Lucid Air. We're for those who love to discover, who don't need to travel to find something new, and who know when you spend less, you can discover even more at TJ Maxx and Marshalls. Smooth, velvety chocolate wrapped in precious gold. Ferrero Rocher.